Hello and welcome to the April 2016 Living Atlas Community Webinar, Leverage NOAA's Living Atlas Contribution. To kick things off, please take a minute or two to answer the poll question, and then we will review the results. I want to thank everyone for participating in the poll with us. As you can see, about 60% of you already use NOAA data and 40% currently do not. And that's something that Randy is going to discuss during his presentation and really emphasize that NOAA wanted to contribute their data to the Living Atlas so more people can see their data and use their data in the ArcGIS platform, and they can use it to help them really enhance their work. So I'm going to go ahead and hide the poll question and get this webinar started. Before we do get started with our first speaker, there are a few general housekeeping items we need to discuss. First, this webinar is being recorded and it should be available by the beginning of next week, if not before. It will be posted to our Living Atlas of the World ArcGIS videos page, our Living Atlas Community Webinars ArcGIS videos page, and in the Living Atlas of the World discussion group on GeoNet. It can be accessed from the Living Atlas of the World website landing page. You will also receive an email with a link to the webinar recording. We have two great presentations lined up for you today, but before we get started with our first topic, I'd like to take a minute to introduce our speakers. Our first presenter is Randy Warren from NOAA. He will describe NOAA's mission to provide actionable content and how contributing to the Living Atlas helps meet their needs. Randy has worked with NOAA for 9 years as a GIS specialist. He is the lead administrator for NOAA's GeoPlatform and lead contributor to ArcGIS Online and the Living Atlas. His background is in GIS, cartography, remote sensing, and coastal hazards. After Randy has finished speaking, we should have some time for questions. Please feel free to send us your questions through the questions panel while he is presenting. Then Keith VanGraafeiland will demonstrate how NOAA's Living Atlas contributions can be leveraged to enhance your work. Keith is a product engineer for ArcGIS content at Esri. He serves as the Ocean Content Curator for the Living Atlas. He works directly with the user community to promote the Living Atlas by encouraging contribution and reviewing content that has been nominated. He is an experienced geographer, GIS analyst, cartographer, and remote sensing analyst. Again, after Keith has finished speaking, we will open it up for questions regarding his presentation. Finally, if there is time at the end, we will open it up for questions regarding either presentation. We will end with some announcements. So now let's go ahead and get started with our first speaker. Feel free to take it away, Randy.
All right, thank you. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yep.
Okay. So again, my name is Randy Warren. I am the lead administrator for our ArcGIS Online account, which we also call the NOAA GeoPlatform. And today I'll talk to you guys a little bit about our implementation of ArcGIS Online, as well as our contributions that we have made over the past couple months to the Living Atlas. So here's our outline over the next 15 minutes or so. So first I want to start out by giving you guys a really quick introduction to NOAA's mission, and then I want to tie our use cases and kind of show how we have used ArcGIS Online to meet NOAA's mission. Then I'll jump into our contributions to the Living Atlas, how it's kind of helped us get the word out for our data and maps, and then I'll wrap it up with kind of a look at some stats, so some nuts and bolts of ArcGIS Online, as well as a quick look ahead of kind of what we see coming next. Okay, so for those of you that are not familiar with NOAA, it is a very, very diverse agency. Even within our mission statement, it calls out, our reach extends from the surface of the sun to the bottom of the ocean. So as you can see in this image here, starting with the satellites up in space, moving to the airborne sensors, then on down to the land sensors, and then of course ocean and coastal observations as well. So in addition to our mission being very diverse, all that data that we're collecting is also very, very diverse. Dr. Sullivan, when she came on board NOAA, she's our administrator right now, she recently dubbed NOAA as America's Environmental Intelligence Agency. So we like that. We're kind of sticking with it and running with it for now. So here's just a quick sampling of some of NOAA's assets, but also what we like to consider some of NOAA's core geospatial assets. So the first one here, the National Spatial Reference System, that really is the backbone of the nation's GPS system, which we are using to support the vast majority of all the data that we're out there collecting every day. And then observing systems. Of our many, many observing systems, these are just a handful. So weather radar, satellites, the GOES and the POES programs, buoy networks consisting of hundreds of buoys, and then tide gauges as well. Ships and aircraft, these are our mobile assets that are out there conducting research, surveys, charting, response operations, things like that. And then, of course, there is the high-performance computing aspect as well. So many data centers throughout the nation providing operational and real-time information on this 24/7 basis. Okay, so not trying to give a presentation on NOAA's strategic vision, but I do want to call out these four specific goals before we jump into how we are using ArcGIS Online to meet NOAA's mission. So first, climate adaptation and mitigation, a weather-ready nation, healthy oceans, and then the fourth one there, resilient coastal communities and economies. So the first one here, climate adaptation and mitigation. On the left-hand side, this is a story map about king tides. So king tides are those highest of the high tides that historically used to happen, I don't know, once, twice, maybe 3 times a year, depending on your location. But now we're starting to see them occur a little bit more frequently. So this story map is intended to educate the public and then also provide community officials with information on how to better prepare for these king tides as they, like I say, continue to happen a little bit more frequently depending on where you are. On the right, El Nino. So we've heard a lot about El Nino this past winter and the different effects that it's had on different areas of the country. So this one right here is another story map about the effects that it has had in Hawaii, especially with rainfall out in Hawaii. So moving on to a weather-ready nation. So this is making sure that we are ready. We have the proper forecasts, warnings in place to help prepare and educate the public so that the way they can be prepared for disasters. On the left-hand side there, storm surge inundation. This is a story map. This is a 5-tab story map, and what each of the tabs do is they walk through the 5 different categories of hurricanes, and they show the different levels of inundation that could occur depending on that category of storm. Now this is a worst-case scenario map, but it does allow you to go in, kind of find the area where you live and say, okay, if a Category 1 storm comes, 3, 5, how much inundation are we going to see and how far inland will we see that inundation? On the right-hand side here, so extreme weather events, this is a big thing. So I think it's important to note, though, that we aren't using ArcGIS Online as a source for disseminating, critical weather information like forecasts and warnings to the public. But what we do we do use this mission essential data to educate the public about future possibilities or tell the story about past events. So that way we can better prepare for the future. So our examples here, we have storms and flash flooding, drought conditions, and especially tornado tracks. I would say right now we probably have at least 24 of these types of story maps out there that are related to weather events. And as we speak, I believe the folks in Texas are building one for those floods that have been happening in Houston this week. So healthy oceans and helping to continue making sure our oceans are healthy. So first, there on the left, ocean acidification around the world. This essentially walks you around the world and shows the effects that acidification has had on different locations throughout the globe. On the right-hand side here, seafloor mapping prioritization. This one is a little bit different. This one is a community-based project. And what we're doing is we're getting this community input to help determine where we're going to be mapping the seafloor off the coast of Washington next. We're going out there to these stakeholders saying, hey, where do we need to be mapping next? We're using ArcGIS Online to do that. The last one here, resilient coastal communities. So how can we help these communities bounce back after a disaster? So first one on the left is a story map. Again, this map that we're looking at here is a heat map that was developed using ArcGIS Online smart mapping technology, which is pretty cool. So this one here is showing the level of resilience initiatives in a particular area. So you can go in and see, are resilience initiatives happening in my county or my city or my state? On the right-hand side here, a lake level viewer. So this is a custom application that helps you visualize the levels of the lake. You take the little slider bar on the left and slide it up and down, and you can, like I said, visualize how far in the water is going to come along the coast. And so what it does is it kind of helps communities, businesses, and other interests to better prepare for the different levels of the lake throughout the year. Okay, so jumping into our contributions to the Living Atlas. So first off, why do we contribute to the Living Atlas? Mainly it's exposure. So we all have our ArcGIS server instances, we have our websites, we have our portals. So the Living Atlas is just one more way for us to get our data out there and make it more easily discoverable, not only by, NOAA folks here, but the entire GIS community in general. So as far as what we have contributed, so NowCoast was a big effort a couple months ago. NowCoast is NOAA's web mapping portal to real-time coastal observations, forecasts, and warnings. So it's all about the coast, right? So the weather forecasts, the wave forecasts and observations, wind, tide, et cetera, et cetera. So like I said, we have about a dozen or so services that we have registered within the Living Atlas, all of which are time-enabled, which are pretty cool. And Keith is going to demonstrate some of those after I'm done. We've also contributed some story maps. So we have some related to weather events. Again, El Nino, since that's a hot topic right now with the effects that it's had to the country over the past several months. One on coastal economies that looks at the effects that fishing and aquaculture and things like that have and how they drive and help support those coastal communities. And then, of course, we have a lot more coming as well. Operational services. So recently within the Weather Service, they just went live with what's called the Information Dissemination Program. It's this operational 24/7 system, and they're going to be serving up a lot of the Weather Services and Ocean Services core data sets. So those things like observations, again, forecasts, climate, and then on the ocean side of things, we have some of our core data as well, some marine protected areas, shoreline, bathymetry, and fish habitat. All of these went live to production about 2 weeks ago, so we're still now getting them all into ArcGIS Online, and as soon as we do, we will be nominating them for the Living Atlas. And so just to kind of wrap things up here, talk about some stats about our ArcGIS Online account. So we first launched in 2011, actually using ArcGIS Portal. This was pre-subscription to ArcGIS Online, but then when that did become available in 2013, we ended up migrating to ArcGIS Online. Our growth curve, I think, is pretty impressive. It's just a straight line that is trending, at a 45-degree angle up. So currently we're at about 1,000 accounts. These are all internal accounts. We don't allow public to create accounts. They are all custom roles, so we've customized all these roles to enable and disable certain functions for all of our users. And I'm happy to talk about that later if you have questions. And then about 1,000 public records right now, about 100 of which are story maps. And then just a quick look ahead. So story maps, we've seen almost an exponential growth in those over the past several months, and we don't anticipate that stopping anytime soon. I think especially with the Weather Service and just kind of, other folks kind of seeing the potential for story maps. Like I said, I just don't see that stopping anytime soon. And then security clearance for ArcGIS Online. This one's kind of boring, but it is important for NOAA. As a federal agency, we are required to have authorization in order to host data in the cloud. Right now we have a workaround for it, but nonetheless it is important for us, and we'll be looking at kind of tackling this over the next 6 to 12 months. And I believe that is all I had.
Okay, great. Thank you, Randy. We did have a few questions come in while you were presenting, and again, if you have any questions for Randy, please feel free to go ahead and put those in the questions panel. So one of the questions we had is, out of all of the items that you have in ArcGIS Online, how many of those are actually in the Living Atlas? It doesn't have to be exact.
Yeah, sorry. I'm the main point. So I was just trying to think about how many I've pushed through. I'd say right now about 24 are in the Living Atlas. And then, like I said, we also have an effort underway to push a lot more of that content into the Living Atlas. I think it's also important to realize, though, that the Living Atlas is the curated best of the best content. That's not to say our NOAA content is the best of the best, but a lot of times it is created specifically for a small region or a small application, so things like that would not go in there. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yep, I think that's great, and Keith's presentation will talk more in depth about the Living Atlas and how items get accepted, things like that. So that should become more clear for those of you who aren't familiar with the Living Atlas during Keith's presentation. Another question we had is, what's the licensing on the data that you have on ArcGIS Online? So can anyone just go use it, or what's the licensing requirements?
Yeah, so as a federal agency, we are required to make all of our data available to the public. And so I pulled up this slide here. I went back a slide, noaa.maps.arcgis.com. It is available to the public, and all the data on there is freely available. Now, this isn't all NOAA data. And one other website, if you want to look at the entire catalog of NOAA data, the website is data.noaa.gov, and that is a metadata catalog-driven collection of data.
Okay.
But to answer the question, all free.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So let's go ahead now and switch gears and actually get started with Keith's presentation.
Great. Thank you, Tamara and Randy. Hello, I'm Keith VanGraafeiland. Today I'm excited to talk to you all about the Living Atlas of the world and some of the NowCoast offerings that are available in the Living Atlas. We're excited about these contributions and hope that other organizations and agencies will provide their data for inclusion into the Living Atlas as well. I'm going to provide a general overview of the Living Atlas and then dive into some demos using Living Atlas and NOAA Coast data. So let's get started with an overview of the Living Atlas. Many of you have probably seen this diagram before of the ArcGIS platform. The ArcGIS platform includes a set of apps on desktop, web, and mobile devices that you can use to access content through a portal. The portal could be ArcGIS Online, or it could be your own private organizational portal. And that portal provides access to a set of services. These services that we make available through online content are where we publish the Living Atlas of the World content. As Randy said, the Living Atlas represents a selected of curated subset content services that are the best of the best. One of the aspects of the ArcGIS platform that makes it really powerful for GIS users is that it contains a rich set of ready-to-use online content and services that you can access immediately. When we think about content, we think about content in the Living Atlas of the World, which includes maps and layers from Esri and thousands of other contributors around the world. This content is a curated subset of the public content that is available through ArcGIS Online, which is organized into different themes such as base maps, imagery, and demographics. This collection of content is growing and changing on a daily basis as new content is added and existing content is updated, sometimes as frequently as every few minutes in instances of traffic or real-time weather, keeping the content truly living in the Living Atlas. So where does this content come from? Of course, a lot of the content is being published by Esri. We have a team of people that build and maintain selected layers in the Living Atlas. Increasingly, content is coming from our partner community. Organizations like Digital Globe or AccuWeather are themselves publishing content. Sometimes they're doing that through Esri and maps that we published. Other times they're doing that directly. Organizations like Nearmap and Hexagon that are publishing very high resolution, very recent imagery that is available in the Esri marketplace are also using the Living Atlas. National mapping organizations, state and local governments, NGOs, and other organizations are creating and publishing content of their own and making it available through ArcGIS Online and the Living Atlas. Organizations like NOAA are publishing real-time information like precipitation estimates, weather radar, and observations. The content of the Living Atlas is built by the ArcGIS community and curated by Esri. So let's take a minute and talk about Esri content. We offer a rich set of maps, layers, and other services to support both visualization and analysis. Most of you are probably familiar with the suite of base maps we offer, which continue to grow steadily in usage, but we also offer several other types of content, such as detailed demographics for the United States and other parts of the world. Transportation layers, such as our real-time traffic feed, railroad densities analysis, and streets at night vector base map. Urban layers, such as development risk, daytime population in Australia, and U.S. historic sites, as well as world cities, world time zones, and world boundaries and places that help provide context to our maps. Many of you are also familiar with our World Imagery Base Map, which is probably our most popular map, but we also offer many other types of imagery, including multispectral, multitemporal imagery you can not only use for visualization, but you can use for analysis and to look at things like healthy vegetation or impervious surfaces. NAPE, MODIS, and Landsat, including Landsat 8, are a few of the image services that we provide with multitemporal, multispectral capability. One of our larger collections, Landscape, houses services including USA Soils, Ecological Land Units, and the Harmonized World Soils Database. Oceans, our newest category to the Living Atlas, has layers that include global daily sea surface temperature, seafloor aragonite, and distance from shore. And one of our popular categories for real-time data is our Earth Observations theme that has services offering current wind and weather conditions, recent earthquakes, and live stream gauges. As you can see, we provide a number of layers that describe the physical and natural landscape of our planet. One or more popular types of content these days is our World Elevation Map, or our topography, which we continue to update with more and more detailed content from our user community as it comes in. This data is used for both 2D visualization, like this multi-directional hillshade that you see here, but also in 3D visualization in applications like Scene Viewer, ArcGIS Pro, and ArcGIS Earth. In addition to 3D visualization, this data can also be used for analysis. One of the new content offerings that we're very excited about this year is our new collection of vector base maps, which are currently in beta release. These base maps will complement the existing set of raster tile base maps and offer some powerful new capabilities. The vector base maps are built from the same source data used in the existing base maps, including user-contributed content. The vector base maps are available in multiple map styles, referencing a single set of vector tiles. Esri will offer a set of default tiles that you can use as is, including familiar styles like streets and topographic, with some new styles like streets at night and navigation. Users and developers are able to create custom styles to do simple things like turn on and off layers or change colors, or more advanced things like change languages or the treatment of disputed boundaries. As with our existing base map, these new vector base maps will be freely available to all ArcGIS users. So how does one access content through the Living Atlas? Well, this is one of the most important concepts. The Living Atlas is an aspect of the ArcGIS Online platform. It is one of the features that makes it useful as a developer platform and as a mapping platform. The fact that ArcGIS comes with a set of ready-to-use content, and the Living Atlas really represents the best of that ready-to-use content. It's not intended that you will access it in any one user experience. The intent is that you'll build it, it's built into various applications, various ArcGIS applications, and others. So through ArcGIS, you can access the Living Atlas through ArcGIS Online. Of course, there's multiple ways that you can do that. And we'll show you a couple of those here in just a minute. We also have a Living Atlas of the World web app that provides a nice way for you to browse and preview maps and layers and tools from the Living Atlas. And then, of course, you can access much of the Living Atlas content through desktop. Applications like ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro provide access to web maps and map layers that can be used in your desktop projects. Beyond visualization in desktop, you can perform lots of interesting analysis. There's capabilities using online content. I will show you some of these examples in a bit. With that, I'd like to provide a demonstration of the Living Atlas. Let's start out by looking at the feature pages for ArcGIS Online. If you go to the feature pages, you'll find out information on our apps as well as our maps. You can learn a bit more about how these work. So the Living Atlas includes live maps, including this example from London of our live traffic data. It also includes intelligent layers, such as our Landsat imagery that allows you to view different characteristics, like in this case, healthy vegetation. And lastly, it includes maps that you can use for analysis purposes. Some of the layers in the Living Atlas, such as our boundary layers or demographic layers, could be used as inputs for analysis. You can also use other Living Atlas layers to visualize the results of your analysis. On this page, you can also get information on different themes that are available in the Living Atlas. Things like imagery, base maps, and demographics, and more. And for each one of these themes, we present 10 to 15 different maps that you can preview. When we're talking about the Living Atlas, and particularly our imagery, one of the questions we often get is, can I find out the currency of the imagery I'm looking at? And the answer is yes, as a matter of fact, you can. This is a web map of imagery with metadata that allows you to do that. So in this case, I open the map and click on the map. The place that we're looking at is Charleston, South Carolina, and I can tell the imagery is from June 12th of 2015. And I could go any place in the world and see this type of information. So this page is a good place to preview some of the content in the Living Atlas. But if I actually wanted to see or use the content in my own work, how could I do that? Well, that's where the ArcGIS.com gallery comes into play. If you sign into your ArcGIS Online with your organizational subscription account, you'll have access to your organization's featured content. And you can also access featured content from Esri. Which includes featured maps from the Living Atlas. This is a place where you can browse various maps that are available. You can tab around the pages of maps that we have. There are several hundreds of them. And you can open it and use it. So here I am, signed into my ArcGIS Online subscription, and I've gone to the gallery for Esri featured content. Here I can filter through the content by different categories. So if I were looking for one of these new vector base maps, I can go to base maps, then I can go to Esri base maps, and I can open up within the map viewer to see the content. It will zoom to the default extent. I can zoom to anywhere in the world that I'd like, such as Denver, Colorado. And you can get a sense for the content. In this case, we're looking at our topographic map overlaid on our multi-directional hillshade. If you want to add more layers to this map, I can do it from the Add Data button. And there is a built-in dialog for browsing the Living Atlas. If you select that, again, you can look at specific categories of content. In this case, maybe I'm interested in adding something for traffic. So if I scroll down here to the traffic category and I show Esri layers only, I'm able to add this world traffic service to the map. So all these layers on the atlas are available at my fingertips. I would encourage you to use the map viewer and the gallery to get these web maps and layers because they're all ready to use authored content. One other example of a map that is available is our demographics maps. This is a map of median disposable income. We can see of Charleston, South Carolina. Showing median disposable income, we can see that on average that Charleston is pretty typical. There are a few areas that are above the norm, and there are a few places that are below the norm. If I want to inspect these a little more, I can select one of them and get more detailed pop-up information that has been authored in the ready-to-use layers. So as you can see, these areas around Sullivan's Island appear to be at the higher threshold range values, and these areas in North Charleston appear to be more industrial in the lower medium disposable income. Very recently, there was a major earthquake off the coast of Ecuador. And this recent earthquake map was updated to show the location by default. So here you can see in the map there's a couple of layers. One is showing the earthquake location as the orange and green point symbols, and I can click on one of those points and get information about this 7.8 magnitude earthquake that happened. And then the other layer is showing the intensity of the shaking that was observed by the people in the area. So the areas in red and orange are where there was strong and severe shaking, and then it shows areas where it was diminished. So you can get a sense for the impact area for this type of event. So hopefully this gives you a good sense of the variety of content that is available through ArcGIS and through the Living Atlas. Now let's take a look at the NOAA NowCoast data in the Living Atlas. We can do that by searching the Living Atlas gallery for owner NOAA GeoPlatform. Currently there are 10 services coming from NowCoast that have been accepted in the Living Atlas. These include services such as satellite and radar imagery and near real-time observations such as watches, warnings, hazards, and in-situ observations. I'm going to use some of the NowCoast data in the Living Atlas to build my own web map rather than use one of the maps that was published in the gallery. So here, I'm going to create a new map. To start off with a blank slate. Let's say I want to make the map in Houston, Texas region. This area has been hit hard with rainfall this week. I'll start in the map viewer here and go to the Add dialog, and in this case I can browse the Living Atlas layers. Which is an option that's available and brings up different gallery of content from the Living Atlas. In this case, it's a gallery of layers that includes map image layers, feature layers, image layers that I can bring into my map. I'd like to find some precipitation estimate information, so I'm going to look for weather information. I'm going to look in the Earth observations category. And here's my surface meteorological and hydrological precipitation estimates provided by NowCoast. If I wanted to, I could have also searched for precipitation estimates here and filtered that information more precisely. Since I've already added this to the map, I'm going to close this and configure the data source for 72-hour quantitative precipitation accumulation. This will give me a good idea of what's happened over the past 3 days. We're interested in seeing how hard these areas have got hit around Houston. I can tell that the most heavily impacted areas are on the south side of Houston. I'm also going to change to our dark gray canvas and change the surface precipitation estimate transparency to about 25%. I find that this works nice with this type of weather information. Now I want to know how many people live in these areas, and I need to add in other information to the map in order to find that out. So in this case, I'm going to go back to Living Atlas layers, and I'm going to look for a population map. Probably in the demographic category. So I find population and housing, and I'm going to select that. I should mention that the searches here are based on my thematic category as well as my current map extent. So it filters out maps that aren't available for my current extent, which is the Houston, Texas region. So I should only see maps that are applicable here. I'm also going to check Show Esri Layers Only. And I can see that there's a map of the 2015 population density. I'm going to select that. As I hover over the item, I can find out that this is premium content that's available with my subscription and will consume some credits here. So I'm going to add that to my map. It's added as a top layer. So I'm going to set the transparency on the layer so I can see the underlying precipitation estimates. I can see here that the areas of intense rainfall relative to the populated areas. So that gives you an example of how you can quickly create a map using layers from the Living Atlas. I'm going to save the results of this web map so I can share it with colleagues. Let's call this map Precipitation and Population. And share this item as public. Instead of sharing this just as a web map though, I'm going to share this as an application using the Esri web app builder. First, I'm going to start by going back into my ArcGIS Online account. And I'm going to select Create App using the Web App Builder. Before I do that, though, I want to share this content item properly. So now that that's been shared, I can go back into my content and create that Web App Builder application. Here's where I'll enter the information for the app I'm about to create. Since we're comparing precipitation and population, let's call it Precipitation and Population App. We can use precipitation, population, weather, and demographics as tags. For summary, let's use application to compare 72-hour precipitation data. This launches our web app builder. As you can see, the title has been applied to the app. The first tab along the top is a theme. A default theme has already been selected. Let's go ahead with the default theme, which is the foldable theme. And let's change the color style to black. I think this will complement our dark gray base map. For layout, I choose the third one that puts much of the information in the app header. I like this. I think it's clean. Moving over to the Map tab, here I will choose a map that we saved earlier, Precipitation and Population. I'm able to sort by most recent and select the Precipitation and Population map. Here I can set the initial extent if I want, or I also have the ability to customize the visible scales. So if you want to prevent users from zooming way out or zooming way in, you could do that here. Let's go ahead and remove the top 5 scale ranges to help prevent users from zooming way out. This will also help with the performance of our layers. The Widget tab allows for custom tools. Here we're going to click on Widget 1 and change it to Swipe Widget. Since there is more viewing room on the screen horizontally, I'm going to select the vertical bar option of swipe. Here you can also configure the default swipe layer, in this case 2015 USA population density. The final tab allows for attribution and branding. Here I'm able to apply a custom logo and any custom text that I like. The final tab allows you to customize with your branding logos, and you also have the option to save your application and launch it for preview and testing. So here we can see the original web map that we created with the embedded widget, swipe widget, to where now you can get a better idea of what that population density looks like against this 72-hour precipitation forecast. You can zoom in, zoom out, and you have lots of capabilities there within the web app template. You also have the ability to look at the previews tab. This allows you to visualize how the app will work within other environments such as iPhone, iPad, and the Galaxy environment. So this is pretty impressive. 10 minutes ago I was browsing through the Living Atlas, and since then I have created a web map and a supporting application to go along with it. So now let's navigate back to this content item and take a look at the nomination process. We will use a Living Atlas contributor applet for this. When I log into my account, the most recent items show up top. I can click on the items to see the associated scoring. 46 is pretty poor. I also have the option edit here and try to get my score up. Let's start at the top and work our way down. I'm missing 10 points for a thumbnail. Let's get that in there. By adding my thumbnail, I've got 10 extra points. I'm missing 10 points for credit and also use constraints, so I can edit that here as well. I've got my 10 points for the credits and access use and constraints. I'm going to modify that as well. And that's brought me up to a 74. I needed to go back and update my sharing, and I'll get this to a nominatable number. I also have the option to edit the description to get more points as well. I'm going back into my ArcGIS Online organization and sharing the population app so I can get the appropriate scoring. Now if I go back and refresh the contributor app, it should pick up on the edits that I've made for sharing, and my score should be above an 80. Now I can nominate this. So all I do is I go over here to set status and select nominate, and now this information is going to be nominated to the Living Atlas of the World. So it's that easy to contribute your content to the Living Atlas of the World. We have a very nice application that's set up for the users to be able to rate, score, and rank their items, as well as fill out and modify that information in a single place to where it could be used and leveraged and nominated to the Living Atlas of the World. Hopefully this gives you a good overview of the Living Atlas, some of the different analysis and visualization that can be done with the data, and also the contribution process. We hope to see more data like the NowCoast data being nominated in the Living Atlas. Thank you very much.
All right, great. Thank you, Keith. We did have a few questions come in regarding your presentation. One, I think is a good one to start with, especially because you just demonstrated this Living Atlas contributor app. What is like the nominatable number? How is it determined? How are points awarded? Could you go into that a little bit?
Sure. So the application is very intuitive itself, and there's a plethora of information that's provided in here as you're going through the nomination process. So that required score that you referenced, it's here, it's an 80. So that's the minimum requirement that you need to nominate something to the Living Atlas. Hopefully you'll have something more of an 80 and be striving for the 100. But also there's information buttons here along the way that provide guidance on the scoring. So for instance, we're looking at the thumbnail guidance. So it says upload a great looking thumbnail that shows a layer, map, or app at its best zoom and scale, what makes your map look great. So each one of these different categories has associated information buttons that will help guide you through this nomination process.
Okay, great. Thank you. And if you could real quick go back to that original web map that you created for the precipitation and population app in ArcGIS Online. Someone asked if you could show the legend for that web map.
Sure. That legend is also accessible here through the app as well, but I will pull that up inside the web map here as well. So now we can see our 2015 USA population density as well as the 72-hour quantitative precipitation accumulation estimate.
Okay, great. And one last question, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to know the answer to this or not, but do you know if you're able to actually embed this application so that anyone would be able to use it, even those that wouldn't have an ArcGIS Online account?
So this application that I shared currently is available for anyone in the public to view. So as long as you have access to that URL, you're able to view that information without signing in or without having an ArcGIS Online account.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let's go ahead and wrap it up here because I know we're pretty much almost out of time. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with the last slide here. So of course, we want to thank everyone for attending the webinar, and thank you to our speakers for presenting today. If you have any additional questions, or comments for the presenters, please feel free to contact them. I believe there was 1 or 2 more questions that we just didn't have time for, so I'll send those over to the appropriate presenters with your contact information so they can contact you directly to answer those questions. If you have any general feedback regarding the webinar, please feel free to contact me. And when the webinar is finished, you will be prompted with a survey. So please take a minute or 2 to answer the survey questions so we can continue to improve our webinars. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. And as I mentioned earlier, the link to the recorded webinar will be sent in a follow-up email. And keep a lookout for more webinars throughout this year. And last but not least, we hope to see everyone at the Esri User Conference. We'll have a Living Atlas presentations, demonstrations, and team members will be staffed at our content island ready to answer your questions. We hope to see you there. Again, thank you for attending today's webinar.